A special thanks to the presenters for their efforts in preparing the slides and also presenting today. Phil, if you could just go to the next slide. So the theme of the fall workshop is mobility as a service. So we've got a series of presentations. So Brandon from the City of Tampa is going to provide an overview of the pilot project for MaaS. And then Whit Blanton and Abhishek Dayal are going to provide an overview of SunRunner. And then we've got a knowledge exchange session from TriMet. So Rylan and Sophia are going to provide an overview of the work that they've been doing. And then Phil and I are going to risk the online brainstorming session to look at potential themes that we could focus on going forwards, as well as potential pilot ideas. The meeting will be recorded and it will be shared later on the Tampa Bay Smart Cities Alliance website. If you could mute yourself during the main workshop, that would be fantastic. And if you have any contributions or would like to ask a question as part of the Q&A sessions, then just please raise your hand and we will come to you. And without any further ado, I will hand over to Phil to drive the slides and Brandon to present. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Thank you all. Good afternoon. If I haven't met you, my name is Brandon Campbell, and I am the Smart Mobility Manager for the City of Tampa. And mobility as a service is one of our core focus areas that we have identified as Smart Cities Alliance, even from the very beginning. So we've been talking about this for a long time. And we are just on the cusp of getting something out as a pilot. I've given a presentation using these slides in one of our recent workshops, so I won't belabor too many of the points that I had made before. But if you're not entirely familiar with what we expect out of mobility as a service, we're looking for well, really in the long run, what we'd really like to see is a subscription-based service for a suite of transportation options. And the scope and scale of that is something that we anticipate expanding from this initial pilot. But in the long run, the ecosystem of MaaS has a lot of benefits, including an improved traveler experience. And Phil, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, you know, we expect enhanced equity, better information management, both in terms of what we are able to push out to our end user, as well as what we're able to onboard in terms of traveler habits. Better innovation, better system efficiency, and better mobility. And so if you want to go on to the next one, Phil, really, I just wanted to give a brief update on what we have done. And we've been working feverishly, even up until, I would say, even 30 minutes ago, to try to get our requests for applications out on the street. I just got an update from my purchasing department that we will have that. It should be on DemandStar, which is our purchasing platform, by the end of this week, and we will be purchasing our required newspaper advertisements to go out next week. So really excited about how that is moving forward. I anticipate a pre-application meeting in early December. I believe it'll be December 3rd, early afternoon, for those of you who may be interested. And a bid opening date of January 4th is what we talked about this morning. So happy to be here with you all. Really talking about specifics of the RFA is probably a territory that I need to shy away from, just based on our procurement rules. But I'm glad that we had this meeting in part so that we could have a good target with our internal processes to say, hey, we want to have a decision made by 1 o'clock on the afternoon of the 18th so that I can make this announcement to the Tampa Bay Smart Cities Alliance. If there are any questions about what is in the RFA or what the expectations are, I do anticipate the opportunity to ask those at that December 3rd meeting. When it comes to the specifics of how that is going to be held, or I anticipate it being a virtual meeting, I guess I should say. And so if there is interest in that, it should instructions for connecting with us at that point should be included, or at least for contacting our purchasing department with that advertisement. But with that, I think I'll hand it back over to Lee. I don't know if you are moderating between now and Whit, but I'll hand it over to you, and thank you all for all of your support with it up to this point through the Smart Cities Alliance. We really appreciate all of the brainstorming and collaboration to this point, and look forward to continued input from the whole group as we look for a successful pilot deployment. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon. That's really exciting news. I'm glad you've been able to come on and share that. As you say, we've been working in the background as an alliance collaborative across the region on developing that pilot. So it coming out to market is a really exciting next phase. So that's really good to see. I appreciate we won't be able to do any Q&A because we're now moving into a procurement exercise. So we can respect that, and I can hand over to Whit to start on SunRunner overview with Abhishek. Thank you, Whit.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity for being here today, and I'm going to be fairly brief and just really set some context for Abhishek to go through the SunRunner project, because everything fits into a framework of how we look at transportation, how we look at land use, how we look at design, so that we can actually have functioning transportation networks at all scales. So I'm going to highlight our work on Advantage Pinellas, which is our adopted long-range transportation plan and the strategy framework that was within that. So let's move on. Next slide. And let me just start with our agency. Most of you, if you're in the Tampa Bay area, are probably familiar that we are the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Pinellas County, but we're also the Land Use Planning Agency for Pinellas County as a result of a merger in 2014. And I was hired as the executive director to lead the unified agency in 2015. And we've been working ever since then to integrate land use and transportation decision-making. And really our long-range plan, Advantage Pinellas in 2019, was the first long-range plan since that merger, and helped really put us in that integration into motion. So our philosophy is that land use comes first, transportation comes second, and that we have a countywide plan that guides where development can happen, redevelopment can happen, where we expect change to happen in Pinellas County. And we want transportation investments to reinforce that countywide plan. And so we use that plan to prioritize countywide needs, identify potential funding. And we're an independent agency, not part of the county government, except tangentially. And we represent all 25 local governments in Pinellas County. And because there are 3 MPOs in the urbanized area, we also have a partnership to look at regional transportation solutions as well. Next slide, please. And I'll just skip over all the pictures of my board members, but we do have a number of advisory committees, and our board meets typically the second Wednesday of the month. And we, Darden Rice of St. Petersburg is our incoming chair, and Dave Eggers, newly elected county commission chair, is our current chair after 2 years. Next slide, please. So Advantage Pinellas is really a land use and redevelopment strategy as much as it is a transportation plan. And it's really built around 3 transportation pillars that complement the land use aspect: improving traffic flow and managing congestion, creating safer streets. We do have a Vision Zero initiative underway, and enhancing transit service. And the challenge we've always had in Pinellas County is that we've done a good job over the years of building a pretty robust highway network. Pinellas long was using county dollars to build parallel roads to state facilities to ensure that we weren't shut down under concurrency for development. And we've built a fantastic trail network. We'll soon have a 75-mile loop around Pinellas County with our Pinellas Trail and have made a number of connections into that. But we've always underfunded and undervalued the importance of public transportation in our county, and that's about to change. It's starting to change. With Advantage Pinellas, we really wanted to take an approach of where do we strategically invest in transit and for what outcome? And the outcome has really been to focus on connecting housing that's affordable with jobs and job training opportunities, whether that's at St. Pete College, whether it's at an employment location or a medical facility or anything like that where we can provide that training. In addition to that, in the last couple of years, the Board of County Commissioners set aside funding from our local sales tax to fund affordable housing and economic development. And to guide that process, we have initiated a countywide housing strategy called Homes for Pinellas. We have a series of webinars. There's one coming up again this week. And that housing strategy and economic development strategy are really the ends of the means of having good transportation service. Next slide, please. So, and we'll just skip on past this to Advantage Pinellas and go to the next slide. So Advantage Pinellas is built upon the premise that we are a unique county and we have some unique needs and unique challenges that we need to deal with. And I think we can spin those challenges into advantages. For instance, people look at us and say, well, you're a dense county, you've got 24 cities, how do you manage? You know, how do you deal with all those local governments? And really that's an advantage because every one of those local governments, or most of them anyway, has a great little downtown, is a very walkable community for the most part. They have a job retail base that's strong, and our commute times are much shorter than the rest of the region for journey to work travel anyway, and pretty short for the most of Florida. And so for that reason, people can live within a 20-minute neighborhood or a 15-minute neighborhood and have access to most of their daily needs within that travel time, whether on foot, bike, or by car. So we look at our unique geography and we realize that we have to plan differently. We have to focus on redevelopment. We don't have greenfield for new development. And our challenge is how do we manage the growth that continues to happen? And the fact that we're maybe growing by several million people in our region, but we're not creating any more beaches. We're not creating any more iconic destinations like downtown St. Petersburg. And so people are going to continue to want to come to Pinellas County, and increasingly they've come here for work. We're second in manufacturing jobs, and we have a very high number of tourists coming to our county. And we're adding 93,000 people. That's roughly the size of the city of Clearwater almost, and another 60,000 jobs. And where do those people go? Where can we create that opportunity? And it's really in our commercial corridors, where we are probably over-retailed by several degrees. And it's already disturbed land, it's already noisy, it's already got impacts, and it's probably the best place to put new development, affordable housing, and create more walkable communities. Next slide, please. I think if you skip ahead, it's just an animation in there. So the county administrator last year, Barry Burton, challenged our agency to, if we were going to look at corridors, what are the top 3 that we would invest in for transit? And it was an interesting question. So we went through an exercise of looking at socioeconomic data, commuting patterns, other factors, and we really honed in on where would transit have the most impact by increasing speed, frequency, span of service, all those kinds of things that could make connectivity better. That's one of our challenges, is cross-county connectivity. And so we looked at what areas are we trying to connect, what corridors connect them, and which corridors should we prioritize. And this is just our basic transit network that you see now. We have connections to Hillsborough, and we've segregated our service into different categories. And Abhishek's going to talk about our BRT project in a second, and let's just move on to the next slide. And I'll highlight the Advantage Pinellas corridors. So the ones that are shown on this map in orange are the limited frequency corridors, and there's quite a few of them. And then we've identified some regional express that we would like to see developed over time. Our county thinks very regionally. And what we ended up doing was prioritizing 34th Street, which is parallel to I-275 in the St. Petersburg area, the East Bay Roosevelt Boulevard corridor, which is an east-west corridor in the center of the map connecting into our Gateway Mid-County area, and then the Alt 19 corridor, which goes from roughly the Tyrone area or the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit corridor all the way north into downtown Clearwater as our 3 priority corridors. That's subject to change. Frankly, if somebody comes up with some funding in another corridor, then it might jump a little higher in the priority list. But we also look at corridors like State Road 580 and State Road 60 as opportunities. But we feel that the 3 I mentioned have the best opportunity for redevelopment, for better transit service, and really linking housing that's affordable with jobs and job training. So this strategy is not just a transit strategy, it is a redevelopment strategy, and the Homes for Pinellas housing strategy falls right into this, and the county has bought into that. Most of the cities have recognized this, and I'm just really pleased that we've got this consensus among staff. Next slide, please. So enhancing transit connections, getting to mobility as a service. We really need that walkable aspect and walkable neighborhoods for transit to be effective, whatever type of transit we're talking about, whether it's bike share or ride share or your trolley or bus system. And so many of the transit riders for PSTA are traveling to or from some sort of job destination, or at least they have been historically. And you can see some of the factors here that Abhishek, I'm sure, can speak to. But that's all kind of baked into this redevelopment strategy. Next slide, please. When we asked the public what they wanted us to spend money on, the graphic on the left shows that they really told us through statistically valid surveys and focus groups and other interactions that they wanted a balanced funding plan. And so we set aside money for technology, for complete street construction grants, for capital transit, for regional investments. You can see in the blue box there how much money we set aside, $60 million over the 25 years for bicycle pedestrian projects, and another $6 million for trail crossings at high conflict areas. Unfortunately, the reality of our funding streams is that we can't achieve the full balanced funding because of how transportation funds in Florida are stovepiped, and we really need more flexibility of funding to achieve that desired spending by mode. So as a result, we are still looking at some highway capacity projects, and we can't flex enough funds to deal with all the bicycle, pedestrian, and transit programs that we want to initiate over the next several years. But we do feel good about the progress we're making of a 10% investment of our total spending in technology and non-motorized transportation. And we'd like to see that 24% for transit up somewhere around 30 or 40%. Next slide, please. So the BRT project is our first capital investment grant program connecting St. Pete Beach to downtown St. Petersburg. And complementing that is a transit-oriented development plan through 2 federal grants that we are working in partnership with PSTA and the local governments to create that 20-minute neighborhood concept around the Central Avenue BRT program. Next slide, please. Also, we have the I-275 corridor where TBARTA is studying a regional rapid transit project that would tie into the Central Avenue corridor. We also have some needed highway improvements that would improve safety. And the beauty of this project of I-275 having managed lanes and the lane continuity improvements is that it frees up our ability to look at 34th Street, which is right next to it, as a transit corridor and as a complete street. It's a 6-lane highway now, and it's pretty awful. But we've got funding for a 3R project from FDOT, a resurfacing project, to build wide sidewalks, to create a business access transit lane. And the funding is in place for that. And we've already got pretty good frequent service along this corridor. So it's probably our next BRT corridor. And it would not happen if we didn't work in partnership with FDOT on the interstate modernization program. Next slide, please. So how do we make the Advantage Pinellas plan a reality? Step one, we've already completed. We've enabled higher density development significantly, by the way, in these investment corridors. The next step is to reduce the regulatory burdens through parking and stormwater and those kinds of things to make private sector investment easier. Number two, we've sort of done, but established priority funding for housing, resilience, and redevelopment, and we've made good strides there. Designing our roadway networks that enhance accessibility and mobility for people, build partnerships, and expand state funding flexibility, which I mentioned. All those things we're in line to do, and I feel pretty confident that over the next several years we'll begin to accomplish them. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks, Whit. I suggest we continue the presentation and save the Q&A for the end, if that's okay. So straight on to Abhishek. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Whit, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abhishek Dayal. I am the Director of Project Management Office here at PSTA, and I'm really excited to talk about the SunRunner Bus Rapid Transit Project, the first of its kind here in the Tampa Bay region. As Whit had mentioned, this is a product of collaboration between several entities, including Forward Pinellas, and it connects, and you can see the map here, it connects downtown St. Petersburg, generally along Central Avenue or centered along Central Avenue corridor, connecting St. Petersburg to South Pasadena and St. Pete Beach on the left portion of the map. Next slide, please. So this is a 10-mile rapid transit corridor, rapid being the key word, with stations or stops, again, connecting those three cities with a ridership of approximately 4,000 a day. And to give you a sense of how many riders we get on the same corridor is about 1,500 to 2,000. Now, this is pre-COVID that I'm talking about, but this will really increase the number of people who get to use this this rapid transit project on a daily basis, for purposes such as work and recreation, as well as tourists who can go back and forth using this corridor. End-to-end travel times we anticipate to be reduced by 30%. Right now, our Central Avenue trolley provides that service between downtown St. Petersburg to St. Pete Beach. Takes about 55 minutes to an hour. And we think that with all the improvements that I'm going to talk about, well, we'll be able to bring that travel times down to about 40 minutes. Next slide, please. So Whit mentioned all the major corridors that Forward Pinellas has been looking at, again, in coordination with several agencies. This is just a snapshot of all the major destinations in the Tampa Bay region that we know we need to connect to through fast, reliable, cost-effective modes of travel. And what you see in green is just a small piece of this bigger regional puzzle that we'll slowly get to. And so that's why this green piece is very critical, because this is the first of its kind amongst other projects that we want to establish and really create that regional network to connect all those major destinations in Tampa Bay. Next slide. So this project is predominantly funded through a very competitive Federal Transit Administration's New Starts program. The total cost of this project is $3.93 million. Almost half that funding is through the FTA New Starts program. The other half is a combination of Florida Department of Transportation with their $10.5 million contributions, and then also City of St. Petersburg and PSTA provided some funding as well. Next slide. I'll talk about the FTA project funding. We essentially found that out about the award through a bit of an unusual way, through our presidential tweet on May 28, 2020, following which we had this event just to celebrate and commemorate the last piece of funding that we were really waiting on to start construction. So that essentially just completed all the funding we needed to get this project moving from the planning and design phase over to the construction phase. Next slide. So this project originally, and this is something that we've been working on for several years. Can you go back? Yes, thank you. And this project used to be called the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit project. And we as a project team recognized that we needed to come up with something that's a name that's more unique, more locally recognizable and understood brand. And for the simple matter that the project actually doesn't run on Central Avenue, it runs on First Avenue North and South. We pretty soon realized that we needed to come up with a different name. And so we spent some time talking to stakeholders, talking with our branding team, our marketing team, and we actually held a brand unveiling event on July 8th. And we unveiled this name called the SunRunner Beach to Berg, which we feel is a very unique and recognizable name that people will like and really appreciate as we move forward. So we changed the name to SunRunner Beach to Berg. Next slide. And then a month later, we also held a groundbreaking out at the Tropicana field to commemorate the start of construction for this project. You can see some photos from all the socially distanced folks at the groundbreaking event, and then also the check that we received from Federal Transit Administration for the $21.8 million as part of the New Starts program. So next slide, please. So construction is underway since then. In fact, a portion of the construction has already been completed. Most notably, on the western end of the project, we completed a bus turnaround facility in partnership with Pinellas County at the County Beach Access Park. And for those of you who are not familiar with that part of the county, it's along Gulf Boulevard, right next to the Gulf of Mexico. There is a public parking lot in St. Pete Beach, and we worked with Pinellas County to identify and design a bus turnaround facility. And you can see the site map or the site plan of what the facility looks like. It is in service right now. Our Central Avenue trolley buses that I've referenced is using this facility to allow for people to get off and literally be at the beach right there. We're also getting 9 buses through Gillig to support this SunRunner project. Next slide. Construction is also underway in other parts of the corridor. One of the unique things that we are doing as part of the SunRunner project is actually constructing a training platform right here at PSTA to allow for our operators to really understand how to operate, how to dock the buses so they're as close as possible to the BRT platforms, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And then you can see in the bottom photo, we added some landscaping at the County Beach Park to provide the shade and to just enhance the aesthetics for the area where the buses will be turning around and laying over. Next slide. One of the aspects of this project is use of what Whit had mentioned in his presentation called the BAT lanes, or business access and transit lanes. These are essentially semi-dedicated lanes that allow for buses to run on them, but also motorists can use these for making turns. Emergency vehicles can also use these lanes. These lanes will be paved with a special red in color to have them set apart from the other general purpose lanes so that motorists can be made aware of the restricted use of these lanes. Besides that, we'll also have signage along the route that might look like one of these signages that you see on the screen, just to inform motorists that these lanes are for limited use for motorists and primarily for buses. Almost 2/3 of the route, SunRunner route, would have these kind of semi-dedicated bus lanes. Next slide. Besides those semi-dedicated lanes, what will also provide some speed and really the word rapid for the bus rapid transit service would be the transit signal priority at several intersections along the route. This is primarily used when buses are running behind schedule by more than 5 minutes. And the way these work is buses will communicate with our operations center on their schedule, whether they're running on schedule or behind schedule. If they're running behind schedule, our operations folks will send a request for priority to either the Pinellas County Traffic Management Center or City of St. Petersburg's Traffic Control Center. And depending on where the bus is located, then that traffic control center will essentially review the priority, and if the priority request is granted, they will communicate directly to the traffic signals so that the buses can essentially go through that traffic intersection quickly and essentially catch up to their schedule. Next slide. I talked about the 9 buses we're purchasing. These buses are also going to be specially wrapped. The bus wrap was designed by a local artist here in St. Petersburg, Chad MaaS, with the very famous Mr. Sun logo here on the side of the bus. We'll also actually have bike racks inside the buses. Many of you that have seen PSTA buses at Pinellas County might have seen the bike racks that are located on the outside. To make the boarding process faster and more streamlined, we decided to just have all the bike racks inside, and I'll show you a picture also in the next slide. We'll also have USB charging ports at each of the seats, along with our free Wi-Fi. As far as the fare system is concerned, we'll actually have fare validators located both in the front and the rear doors. There will be a cashless payment system. So essentially, you will have 2 options to make the payment. Either you can use your smartphone and download a regional fare app called Flamingo. And that way you can pay and essentially scan your phone at any of those 2 validators. Or if you don't have a smartphone, you'd be able to purchase a preloadable card, a smart card, and be able to tap that at either of the validators on the doors. We'll also have extra wide rear doors, knowing that bikes and strollers and other traffic will be going through that rear door. So to allow for that, we'll have wide rear doors. All our buses will be hybrid electric. We'll also actually have 2 extra large 37-inch passenger information screens, which will inform people on when the next destination is coming, what's around those destinations, and any kind of informational videos that will be playing in the background. Next slide. I mentioned the bike racks inside which is a bit of a new concept, particularly here in the Tampa Bay region. We don't see a whole lot of bike racks inside buses. And that's something we are working with the bus manufacturer on to make sure that it's a safe way to get people in and out, be able to easily put the bike racks up and provide the space and not create too much overcrowding inside the buses while they're bringing their bikes on board. So that's something we're still working on. Here's just a little demo of what the bike racks could look like. It's still in the works, and we hope to have that rolled out just in time for the service to be operational. Next slide. I mentioned the stations. All the stations will actually have elevated platforms to allow for easier and level boarding, whether it's bikes that are going through or strollers or even wheelchairs. They will be at the same level as the buses. Again, we think that would actually create a faster way to board and alight off the buses. All stations, or at least most stations, will have security cameras. They will also have what we call a totem pole, which is to the right of the shelter, that'll have video screens that'll inform people on when the next bus is coming. Also, how to use a bike rack inside the bus, or how to pay for your fare through the smartphone or through the card. And then my favorite is select St. Pete stops will actually have artwork designed by a local artist, which I'll talk about next. Only in St. Pete stops, but this is something that we're also going to be incorporating into the stations. Next slide. So the station art is actually completely funded by City of St. Petersburg. We, along with the city, did select Sea Glass Studio LLC to commission the station art. As I mentioned, this art will be developed on all the stations within St. Pete using the laminated glass, and this is something that Sea Glass Studio excel at. In fact, they've done a lot of glass-related artwork throughout the county. Can you go? Yeah. And the intent is really to complement and augment the SunRunner brand and also incorporate some unique characteristics of adjacent neighborhoods, as well as destinations at each stop. Next slide. So there will be 2 glass panels at each location. One of the things that the artist was really keen on was conceiving this as like a single mural, knowing that City of St. Pete, you see a lot of murals, particularly in downtown. So she wanted to design all the stations as if they were one long mural, so that individually they would also say a story, but also have a more of a mural story when you combine them all together. Next slide. And each stop will have 2-sided views. So there will be a side that's facing the street where all the cars will go by. It'll have broader strokes, more vivid and more bold imagery. Whereas on the patron side, where people are actually waiting for the bus to arrive, they'll actually see a little more detail about the destinations or the neighborhood where that station is located. So we're pretty excited about this aspect of the project. Next slide. So just finally, the construction is underway. As I said, we are focusing mostly in St. Pete Beach and South Pasadena at this point, and work our way towards St. Petersburg and downtown St. Pete. Our plan is to have most of the construction done in the beach area prior to the spring break rush. Overall construction we anticipate to be 18 months. That will include the milling and resurfacing, primarily along First Avenue North and South, and that will include the installation of those bat lanes, those red-colored bat lanes, the station construction with those platforms that I had mentioned, including the artwork, and then also the traffic signal improvements to enable signal priority. We're also coordinating with all the local jurisdictions, St. Pete Beach, South Pasadena, City of St. Pete, Pinellas County, with their local construction projects to minimize any kind of disruption in the neighborhood, so that people only see construction once and they don't see road closures multiple times. So overall, we anticipate project opening in 2022, and we're really excited about this project. And last thing I'll just say is this wouldn't have been possible without the coordination efforts with several entities, City of St. Pete, FDOT, Pinellas County, and of course Forward Pinellas. So we're really excited to finally move this project into the next phase. So with that, I am happy to take any questions.
Excellent, thank you, Abhishek. And with for that strategic overview and the detail on SunRunner. So if we open it up to the floor in terms of questions, feel free to raise your virtual hand, and I'll try and bring you in. Any questions from anyone? I'll start with one for Whit. I was interested, Whit, in what you were saying about some of the funding associated with kind of non-road modes going forward. such as transit, walkability, etc. How have you thoughts in terms of how you can bridge that gap going forward? Do you see grants as kind of part of the solution to help the funding issue?
Yes, grants are a big part of it. We've created a Complete Streets program where we provide grants to our local governments. We use our PL dollars, which is our federal planning funds that an MPO receives for planning and design funds, and those are awarded competitively. And then we use our transportation improvement program to fund construction up to $1 million for complete street projects. Also, those are competitively evaluated. And then we use our transportation alternatives program funds as a grant to competitively award bicycle and pedestrian projects. But none of those fund sources are large amounts of money. And one of our challenges in Pinellas County is that we have there's a pot of money called Other Arterials funding that is used by the state to fund capacity improvements on the state highway system that's not part of the strategic intermodal system. So like Ulmerton Road or Gulf Boulevard or even of Gandy Boulevard are not part of the SIS. So they get Other Arterials funding. Well, we, in our projections, looking at our revenues, found that we had almost $400 million of other arterial money coming to Pinellas County that we did not have projects for. And we consulted FDOT and they said, well, you have to have a capacity improvement to be able to use those funds. Yeah. Well, I maintain that a really good bus rapid transit project will add person carrying capacity to your corridor. And I think FDOT in an urban county like ours needs to rethink other arterial program funds and give us a little more flexibility to use those funds on a strategic transportation investment in some of our arterial program funds. That would be an example of where additional flexibility would be helpful. Same with the SIS program. We can't run a bus rapid transit project on the interstate using SIS dollars, even though it's part of the SIS program, because it's not fixed guideway or considered fixed guideway if it operates in a managed toll lane, for instance. So I think DOT is receptive to some of those ideas. We just need to figure out how to work it out and not make other parts of the state angry at us.
Which is always good. No, that's really useful. Thank you. Any more questions from around the virtual room? So one has come in. I can get the technology working. Alice.
Hey, thank you for these great presentations. You've given us a lot to think about, and trying to just kind of tie it into the MaaS discussion for today, and was wondering if PSTA or maybe even the city or MPO has, since you have so many of these great programs, and this is a wonderful start for some premium transit in the region, but I know it can be, connected with our other modes that you have both in your downtown areas and really throughout Pinellas County. So has there been a thought to like an integrated platform that would help, provide this trip planning that we're talking about with the MaaS platform from maybe from you, Abhishek?
Sure.
Cheryl looks like she's got her hand raised too, so she's going to jump right on that.
I can start, and maybe Cheryl can add as well. And I think there are a couple other folks at PSTA also who can chime in if needed. But yeah, as far as SunRunner is concerned, we are actually leveraging a lot of our innovative mobility services that we already offer, including Direct Connect, which is our partnership with Uber and Lyft to provide that first mile, last mile connectivity from all of our stops. Trip planning is also another thing that we are looking at through our apps on making sure that SunRunner, as well as all the other innovative mobility programs, can all be tied in to provide that complete trip experience. Cheryl, did you want to add something more?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, Cheryl Stacks, City of St. Pete. I did want to just add that so we have some micro mobility modes, bike share and scooters that just launched in St. Pete, and we've required those operators to provide real-time GBFS feed information to PSTA. We required that contractually in those agreements with them that they're required to provide that. So that's one step that a jurisdiction can do to kind of help integrate that coordination. But they've provided it now to the transit app, which PSTA is working in partnership with. So to kind of provide that integrated from a user perspective, you'd be able to do your trip planning across several different modes, the micromobility connecting in with the transit. So I think that's all that I would add. I think I saw Jacob. He's been who we've been working with at PSTA. I think he's got his hand raised. He might be able to add some more too.
Hi, yes, I do. Thank you, Cheryl. This is Jacob Lubutka with PSTA. So just to add on to what Abhishek was saying about our Direct Connect program, so we actually received grant funding from FTA to integrate our Direct Connect program into Transit app. So basically, the user right now has to go into the Uber platform to just do the Uber portion of their trip, and then would have to go into Transit app to, book and hopefully eventually pay for their trip. But this integration will allow users to be able to do everything with Uber within the Transit app, so they can plan, book, and pay for their subsidized Uber ride to or from transit within the Transit app platform. So that's kind of one of the steps we're taking to sort of to incrementally get to more of a MaaS type platform.
That's great, Jacob. This is Alice again. I don't know if I don't want to take over the conversation, but he mentioned Flamingo Fair. So is there a hope that that the fee payment eventually would be all integrated? I know Uber's harder because they have their own individual requirements, but.
Yeah, so I know that's something we've discussed with Bytemark and Init. So I think we've been talking about it, and Transit app has several other agencies that they work with that also utilize sort of the Bytemark mobile app platform that Flamingo is running on. So I think that conversation has advanced. So yeah, it's definitely something that is being considered and worked on. So yeah, as that conversation continues and it leads into an actual integration that can happen, this group will definitely be informed of that.
Awesome, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Good question, Alice. Really appreciate it. Any more questions from around the virtual room? Well, I think that ending point around Flamingo and payment systems, integrated mobility is a really good segue into the knowledge exchange from TriMet and the presentation that Ryan and Sophia are going to undertake. So I'll hand over to those guys now and Phil to drive the slides.
Hey, can you see my screen and how's my audio?
I can see your screen and your audio is good for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to this discussion. I'm Sophia Malitz from TriMet based in Portland, Oregon. And yeah, I'm really glad that Abhishek touched on the payment system that your teams are utilizing, because we are about to dive way too deep into payments. So I hope that's okay. I have been working in the AFC MaaS payment space for about 8 years now. I helped with the creation of the virtual card with Google and Apple and TriMet while I was working at Movil about 3.5 years ago. And then about a year ago, I actually moved over to TriMet and I'm on the payments team at TriMet now. A little bit about TriMet, for those of you who are unfamiliar. We provide service through about 700 buses, 60 miles of light rail, a commuter rail, and then on-demand paratransit. Pre-COVID, we were providing about 300,000 weekday trips, and currently we're running at about 40% of our pre-COVID ridership numbers. And if you've been following the news, as of today, the Portland metro area has gone into a 1-month lockdown. So I'm back working from home, as are many of the folks in this region. Hop specifically is the branding for our fare payment system, and it encompasses 2 other transit agencies, so the Portland Streetcar as well as Vancouver, Washington's C-Trans system. Looking at the timeline, I thought it was important to kind of highlight how long it takes and what the steps are for putting together sort of an integrated fare collection system, because it is a long haul effort that takes a lot of long-term vision. So TriMet's leadership team committed to procuring a new AFC solution in 2010, so about a decade ago. And at the time, we did not have a card-based solution. We just had paper tickets. So the first step that was actually identified was fare simplification. So this is one of the most challenging political pieces to a fare collection system, but especially as we talk about integrated payments, having a simplified fare makes integrated payments more accessible to riders. So TriMet went from a fairly complicated zone-based system to a flat fare across the region with really simple transfers between TriMet and the other agencies in the region. We then launched mobile ticketing in 2013 and issued an AFC RFP, which was awarded to Init in 2014. In 2017, so about 3 years of development, we launched Hop. So Hop has been live for 3 years now. It's an open architecture platform, and I will go into detail on that in a minute. Account-based, meaning all the customer information is on the back end, and the card only acts as an identifier for that information. And then we also, from day one, launched fare capping, which allows to build up towards a day pass or a month pass. So instead of having to pay up front for your day pass or month pass based on how you ride over the course of the day or the month, you aggregate your contribution to the total cost of that. And then in August, we launched Open Payments, which is the ability to tap your contactless bank card or your mobile wallet on a reader and pay for transit. 2018, we hit our first milestone. So about 1 year after launch, July of 2018, we had processed 10 million transactions through the system. And that's when we launched the virtual card in the Android wallet. In 2019, we launched the iOS card. So it's actually, from a user perspective, they look like the same solution, but they are very different from a technical backend perspective. So the iOS card took a significantly more amount of time as it included an additional integration. And then in December, we decommissioned mobile tickets. So our TriMet Tickets app, and I believe you said you had Bytemark as your provider for mobile ticketing. It was a really popular solution, but it was a lot of work to maintain two fare collection solutions, and we wanted to encourage adoption of the card. So we moved everyone over to our Hop card. This year, we really focused on moving all of our institutional accounts onto Hop. So we have about 250,000 riders who receive benefits through their institution. And then we were awarded FTA's IMI grant, which is something that I'm currently working on and we'll get into later in this call. And then finally, we anticipate final system acceptance sometime next year. So we're still working on small features within it to sort of wrap up the contract and move into system acceptance. This probably looks very familiar to the solution that the Flamingo solution you have today, but this kind of demonstrates all in its back end and all of the components that it integrates with. So from the retail network for loading funds through validators, TBMs, and IVR, web applications, mobile applications, etc. And what's important about this picture is that when you have both an open architecture and open APIs, essentially any of these components can be exchanged for a different vendor. So although we do use init validators and the init driver terminals, we could swap those out for a Scheiten-Bachmann solution, for example. And then as components need to be upgraded or replaced, we can go out to a new RFP or bring in a new vendor that might better fit our needs. So sort of these yellow arrows point to the 3 areas that we're going to be working on next to improve. So we need new TVMs. We'll be working on a new web application, as well as a new inspector app. So instead of having to replace the entire solution, we can incrementally work on incremental improvements. And then secondly, with the grant funding, we're going to be looking at different creative ways to extend functionality within the retail network, our open payment solution, and the mobile application. So these areas is kind of what I wanted to focus on next, because they might be most relevant to your team as you think about an integrated payment solution. So the Hop system, like you've seen, has this back end, which is supported by Init. And then from a media perspective, we have physical Hop cards, open payment contactless cards, virtual Hop cards, and limited use paper tickets. And these paper tickets are also NFC enabled. So focusing first on card distribution. When we first launched, we gave away thousands and thousands of cards for free. And now we distribute them through the retail network. So we don't actually have card distribution through our TDMs, but you can see here, we have over 500 retailers located throughout the region, which sell cards. And they sell adult full fare cards, as well as honored citizen, age 65 plus cards, and youth cards. So through this network, you can also reload your cards with cash. So it's a good way to first introduce people to the system, and then people who are reliant on cash to reload their fares can come back as a recurring customer to reload their cards. I kind of wanted to look at this picture too, because that 500 number is a big number, and it's important to have that spread. But what we've found is that quantity doesn't necessarily mean high utilization. So Fred Meyer, which is a Kroger brand grocery store in the area, they have 34 locations where they sell our cards and do reloads. But they actually account for 33% of all of our sales through retail locations. The second largest seller is Safeway with 43 locations and 23% of total sales. And then Plaid Pantry with 100 locations and 21% of sales. So again, it's important to reach out and work with the mom and pop shops. You know, we have 185 retailers that use a web interface to sell cards and load funds. And that really helps provide the spread to all neighborhoods. But they really only account for 5% of sales. This graph shows stored value and product loads through our different sales channels. And I tried to compare sort of pre-pandemic numbers with during pandemic numbers to highlight some interesting things we're seeing in the industry. And I've seen this to be true at other agencies as well. So by far, we sell our most fares through the institutional website. So employers sponsoring their employees or nonprofits sponsoring their constituents with transit fare. Behind that is our Hop Fastpass application in July, and then our retail network for loading cash funds. If you move over to July 2020, that picture shifts a little bit. Sorry, it went institutional website, Hop Fastpass app. The dark purple is ticket vending machines, and then it went to our retail network. Our retail network in July of 2020 now accounts for 17% of all of our sales, 7%. So what we've seen is that low-income riders are still relying heavily on transit. So our riders that rely on cash to pay for transit fares are still riding the bus and the light rail, and now account for a larger percentage of our total sales. Card registration and management. So we have, I mentioned the account management app, as well as a website where riders can register their card and see benefits of fare capping, as well as set up auto load and virtualize their card. This is, I think, pretty basic. Yeah, so that's the focus of the overall system, specifically for virtual hop cards, looking at how we are sort of improving our virtual hop card solution. Today, so as a part of IMI, we're looking at how to extend our personalized honored citizen low-income hop cards into the virtual space. So if you qualify for one of these programs, you may need to get a hop card with your picture and your name on it to certify that you're the owner of that reduced fare. And that's a pretty common practice across the states for people who receive discounted fares. We want to allow those riders to be able to virtualize their cards as well. And today, neither Apple nor Android allow for personalization in the wallet. And so we're looking at how we can still provision a hop card, but maybe utilize inspection as the personalization piece. So when the inspector app read the card, then the rider's image and name would come up through the inspection app. And the reason this is significant is because we have a lot of riders that qualify for a reduced fare and have requested that they also want to use their phone to ride transit. So some national statistics, about over half of adults age 65 plus have access and utilize a smartphone. And then kind of another demographic, 71% of people with annual income less than $330,000 also have access to and use a smartphone. So these sort of honored citizen protected groups in our system, they still use smartphones and they still want to use those to ride transit. A little extra nugget I wanted to highlight here. This is showing May 2019 to 2020 numbers. So adult taps, in the month of May 2019, we processed 1.5 million adult taps and about 500,000 in 2020. Conversely, for honored citizen taps, we processed about 1.25 million taps May 2019, and then just over 500,000 in 2020. So our ridership numbers have dropped significantly in both categories, but the rate at which they've dropped in the honored citizen category is less. So about 50% of our riders right now are honored citizen riders. And then finally, institutional cards. Again, these are personalized cards, and they represent about 250,000 cards in the system. And this is the #1 request that we get through our call center and other channels is, why can't I virtualize my card that has benefits on it from my employer? Improvements in the open payment space. So only about 4% of our taps today are from open payment cards, and that represents both a physical contactless card and one loaded into the wallet. And all of those are processed as adult taps. So we want to extend the benefit of an honored citizen and a youth reduced fare to these participants, these riders as well. And so we'll be looking at how to work with the card brands and work with our payment processor to potentially allow riders to register, like bring their own card to the solution, register their open payment card, and then self-certify as an honored citizen or a youth rider so that they can receive those benefits when riding with that card. And I recently heard in a webinar that MTA is also considering how to do this. So I think this will be kind of the next wave within the open payment space. So I defined fare capping briefly earlier. We offer daily and monthly fare caps on our physical or on our hop cards. With open payment cards, we only offer a day cap. So we are working with both Init and visa to see how we can offer a monthly fare cap for an open payment card, so that you as a rider, if you're using your open payment card, can still get the benefit of a monthly fare cap. And that will also probably require some sort of registration process so that you could have visibility to this same UI that shows your progress. So riders can earn essentially day pass badges that demonstrate they can ride for free the rest of the day, and they can also see their progress for a monthly fare cap or a daily fare cap. So again, this is kind of illustrates the fare simplification. So here across TriMet, C-Tran, and streetcar, it's all the same price. You're earning the same sort of day cap at the end of the day. And the one exception is the express bus run from downtown Vancouver to downtown Portland, and that's operated by C-Tran. So I think integrated payments, that's kind of the meat of this topic, so to say. And I wanted to demonstrate what that spectrum means, because when people say integrated payments, it means a whole host of different things. And I think I heard something about a subscription model earlier in this call. So that's definitely one component of integrated payments. So this picture kind of goes left to right, and left starts with private sector ownership. It requires that agencies, sort of lay the groundwork for private sector participation. But in the end, there is a little bit more risk as there's less maybe control over the solution, less direct access to the customer, and sometimes higher transaction costs. But that concept is open payments essentially. And I pulled this little image from the Miami-Dade website. So we're seeing open payments being accepted more and more places across the United States. And that's essentially the bring your own card model. And it's why through IMI, we're trying to extend the number of people that can participate and have access to this solution. So from a user perspective, we don't usually talk about open payments as integrated payments, but from a user perspective, it really is that one card can be used wherever you want it to be used. And maybe there's a little bit more of a setup cost, but once you've set it up, it feels like a fully integrated solution with one payment at the end of the month. On top of that, is an open payments with subscription model. So TfL in London has opened up their system for monthly fare capping for open payments, which is what we're trying to do in Portland over the next 2 years. And what this has allowed is private sector investment into sort of creative solutions around payments. So CityMapper is a company that partnered with MasterCard to offer a transportation pass to the region, which included public transit, bike share, and I believe car share, and potentially like a TNC piece. And how it works for monthly fare capping is they basically preload the card with the amount of money needed for reaching a monthly fare cap. And then from a user perspective, as they tap, it just looks like they're getting a free pass over the course of the month. Again, this required some government investment to set up monthly fare caps, but then opened the door for the private sector to be creative and do the rest of the development. Sort of more of a partnership model is the pass-through subscription model. And this is what WIM has done, which was kind of the lighthouse for MaaS and integrated payments, integrated trip planning. So there, the fare agency actually sells their fare products through a private sector app, which then bundles that product with other offerings to offer sort of a subscription model. And it sounds like this might be an area that your region is thinking about with Transit App. I should also highlight that WIM utilizes the Open Trip Planner. So those of you that are thinking about integrated trip planning, TriMet developed an open source product called Open Trip Planner through the MOD grant, so through FTA funding. And it is being used all over the world right now. So it's also the backbone for Columbus Smart City Initiative around integrated trip planning. And Uber, bike share, those are both included in the trip planning experience. Even further to the right, we have a product bundling model, and this is being done by the City of Portland. TriMet is sort of tangentially involved in that we're helping automate pieces of this. But basically, the City of Portland is pre-purchasing a bunch of transit benefits, including Hop value, an annual streetcar pass, Biketown credits, and Biketown is managed by the city, as well as scooter credits. So the city manages the microtransit scooter pilot, and as a part of those requirements, they require that the scooter companies allow the city to sort of pre-purchase scooter credit and then be able to distribute that credit via coupons. So if you live in the central east side district of Portland, which has a very is very dense and has limited parking, then if you pay $99, you get access to $250 of TriMet value, streetcar pass, Biketown credit, and scooter credit. So it's a little bit different way of looking at credits and passes, and it's right now it's a pretty manual process, but I feel like it's a strong stepping stone to then move towards a more integrated system. And then the final sort of area is the full AFC stored value MaaS model, which I think is what's talked about most in the industry, but seen very few places. And that's where the public sector holds the full purse for stored value and then distributes that based on utilization. And this model has been talked about for at least 3 years in the industry. And I have worked on it for that full period of time as well. It's always hits barriers when it comes to contractual discussions with other mobility providers. And I think that's because of the customer access and then the fund and data ownership piece. So yeah, I'm still have hope that maybe we'll see this someday somewhere. But I'm also seeing like a lot of progress in these other areas, which could lead to similar outcomes when it comes to accessibility and payments. So I think that's it from my perspective. Any questions?
Thank you, Sophia. I really appreciated that knowledge exchange. If we've got any quick questions, yeah, we can feel free to raise your hand. No hands at the moment, so thank you. If there's any follow-up questions, we can connect you with Sophia as well, so we can keep that dialogue going. Just while we're in the process of handing back to Phil to drive the slides, I just wanted to open the floor to Johnny Wong, who wanted to raise an item. Hey, Johnny.
Hey, Lee, how's it going?
All good. Mm-hmm.
Thanks for fitting me in. I appreciate just taking a few minutes of your time, even though I wasn't on the agenda. We're working on an opportunity that came up relatively recently, so you'll have to forgive me for not giving you more time to prepare. As many of you know, we recently kicked off our Smart Cities Mobility Plan, and a key part of this plan that differs from previous versions is that we're really focusing on getting feedback from members of the community about equity considerations in cities' technologies. So a lot of the benefits to these technologies are fairly clear and documented, but we don't have very good data about public perceptions of them. And so we're setting up a survey, hoping to launch it tomorrow in time for the Great American Teach-In. and we want to get public feedback on some technologies that may implicate privacy, surveillance, law enforcement. We're trying to keep this as short as possible, but some of the technologies that we've already identified are red light running cameras, flood sensors, smart street lights, gunshot detection sensors, and a smarter public transit system similar to what Sophia just presented. If any of you have any ideas for technologies that you would like for us to include, please type them into the chat box. Again, we're on a deadline, so I'm hoping to have this survey completed by later today. So if you have any recommendations, type them in and I'll get to work on it ASAP. And thanks for your time.
Excellent. Thank you, Johnny. Really appreciate it. And also, if there's any particular follow-ups people reflect on after the meeting, feel free to send those through, and we can also connect those back to Johnny by the end of the day as well. Okay, so now we were going to move on to the brainstorming piece. So, as many of you will be aware of this last year or so, we've been focusing on three main themes, and those three themes are reimagining infrastructure, the regional data platform, and mobility as a service. But we thought we'd take the opportunity to do some further brainstorming. That could be considering additional themes that we should be focusing on going forward. For example, on the left-hand side, we have transportation and education, or transportation and healthcare, or transportation and the hospitality industry. But also we're interested in additional ideas. So I think if the technology works, Phil is going to share a link, or has done already, to this website.
Yeah, Lee, the link went out with the reminder for today, went out yesterday. If you didn't get the link, we're going to be sending it out again. And so we've opened it up now so you can add your ideas, or what they also call as cards, by just clicking one of the plus signs under the column that you think it belongs in. And then what we'll do is we'll accept ideas through November 25th. We'll do the organizing committee. We'll take a look and maybe combine items that may be duplicates or that would go good together. And then we'll open it back up for voting, turn the voting on, and then we'll ask you to go pick your top 5 just to do that. And again, you'll get emails for those. So if you didn't get an email from me directly, if you would email me at winters@cutr.usf.edu, and I'll make sure that you get an email with the links and the instructions.
I just pasted your link into the chat, so it's in there now.
Oh, good.
Awesome. Thanks, Alice. So if people would like to click on that link now and spend a few minutes brainstorming ideas, adding either those cards in around particular pilot projects that we could be considering, or additional themes similar to reimagining infrastructure through to mobility as a service, that would be awesome. Alice, I know you've got one on there already. So talk to me about innovative hot air ballooning.
You're supposed to have deleted that because it was a test.
Oh, it was awesome. I like the idea.
But just in case people have not used this format before, it's pretty easy. And where you see the plus signs, you can basically, if you have some ideas underneath one of the topics that's already there, maybe you could put pilot this or a new idea this. And you can also, if there are on the boxes that you already see there, you can go in and kind of vote for ones that you feel like, oh yeah, this is definitely should be a focus of ours for future. Or maybe if there's input on, if you have a comment on one of those that you already have some activity on some of those, that would be great too. So that's the kind of feedback that we're looking at for the next couple of weeks. But hopefully if you can this link over the next couple days. It's super easy to use, and we'd love to just be able to, you know, get some new direction. It's been, believe it or not, and I see names on here that have been on these conversations since the late 2016, 2017 timeframe. That's about the time we started doing the visioning in 2017. And so those 3 platforms, you know, we've made a lot of progress in them, but, you know, it's time to kind of regroup and make sure that we're still all marching in the right direction and we're capturing all the great things that we're already doing.
Well, Ellis, I think all you have to do is update your hot air ballooning to the air taxi, because they're opening the new ones in Orlando, right? They've got a new service that's going to get started over there.
I think that's a good one to add, Ken. It's a really cool solution in Lake Nona.
I mean, we've got water to go over here, so that should be a better option.
Right.
So
anybody have any comments on the 3 we kind of threw out there? It kind of overlaps with some of the things that Whit was discussing today, and of course with our transit opportunities as well, that connectivity. Any thoughts on those categories?
So, were you looking at automated vehicles as an area that you want to look at?
Absolutely. I think that probably falls under reimagining infrastructure, but it could be its own as well. You'll see that the connected vehicle pilot is in there already. But yeah, automated needs to be consideration as far as readiness.
Yeah, feel free to add in that card. I think that's definitely a core area that we need to be looking at. Phil, remind me again of the windows of.
Sure. We're going to keep this open so you can, from the comfort of your own desk, add ideas through November 25th, and then we'll take the results and, if necessary, combine a few if they seem to be duplicates. And then we'll send you the link again with the voting enabled. So you'll be able to then vote on the top 5. And that'll run from December 1st through December 4th. That's the current plan.
Excellent. Thanks, Phil. So I think everybody's got the link, so that's good, and we really welcome your ideas and then the subsequent voting. Just in terms of today's session, thank you again for everybody attending, and in particular the presenters. Particular action area to feedback to Johnny on the technology ideas, technology solutions as part of the Smart Mobility Plan, and then the broader community around the ideas and then the voting. But like I said at the beginning, the workshop has been recorded, and we will be uploading it onto the Alliance website in due course. So unless anybody's got any further questions that they would like to raise their hand for, I would suggest we bring the workshop to a close. No more questions. So thank you for your time. Keep safe and look forward to the next workshop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.